Hey crafty friends, it's Jeannie, and today I'm sharing this shaped mini slimline card featuring Essentials by Ellen, Sweet Spring, and Mama Elephant's Hey Neighbor stamp and die sets. So I'm starting off with my mini slimline card base, which I'm cutting out using my Fiskars paper trimmer, which I also use as a score tool because there's that little divot where the blade is, and it works perfectly fine as a scoring tool if you want a 2-in-1 deal. I realized after the fact that I probably didn't really need to cut this out because all you really need is the fold in the card base, and then I'll be using the coordinating dies to cut one side of the card, which will be the main shape. For the die itself, it does cut windows, so I only wanted it to cut most of the die and not the side of the die where the card fold is. I ran it through my Gemini Junior without the plates matching up where the card fold was, so it wouldn't cut through. So it cut through the windows and cut through most of it. I used a pair of scissors just to finish off the cuts near the card fold, and then I went ahead and used my pencil to trace over the shape of the card, and I just went ahead and fussy cut this. I had this whole idea in my head and I didn't realize that the die actually cuts out the windows, and I didn't want the windows being cut out of the back of the card. This is why I had to do it. I had to kind of navigate and figure it out. I really wanted to make this card. This has been in my head for a really long time. I just haven't had the chance to do it. I am using the coordinating stamp to go ahead and stamp it. You'll see that I masked off the card on the left hand side, mainly because I had run it through the die cut machine, but it will only be a partial since the fold is right there. I'll mask it off so that inked portion won't be on the back of the card, so this could look cohesive. And there's plenty of other ways to create a card base. You can cut out the shape and then use another piece of cardstock and create a hinge and connect it that way, but I just happened to choose this way of doing it and it worked out fine. Whichever way you prefer works perfectly. I am doing some mixing and matching of stamp sets. I'm using the Ellen Hudson Sweet Spring stamp set to stamp out a couple of images. I wanted like this spring Eastery card with Easter eggs. I thought these images were perfect because they have that peeking mouse, and I wanted him to peek out the window and the little chick will be just standing on the windowsill. I'm just going to go ahead and color them. I started off with 3 eggs and ended up adding 2 more because I kind of wanted them scattered throughout the house. I'm just quickly coloring up these images. I'm not doing anything special, but I do use my Copic markers, and I use about 3 for each color area. I usually go in with the darker and then blend out with the middle color and then color the rest of it in the lightest shade. When I went ahead and colored this house, I really wanted to do rainbow colors, and that's kind of what I did. I worked in kind of ombre colors to color up this entire house since it has 4 different floors. So the roof, the 3rd floor, the 2nd floor, and the 1st floor where the shop is. So I started off with my reds at the very top because it's the roof, and that's actually a pretty normal color for a roof. Usually it's like red and brown, and I went ahead and masked off the side of the card again because I didn't want my markers to be on the back of the card once I fold this up. For the coloring, I decided to use a bunch of different colors. You definitely don't have to do this. You could just use one color for each area or each floor of this house, but I thought it would be fun to do an ombre color, and I realized while I was coloring this that I started off with the roof with the darkest color on top, working my way to the lightest, and then when I did the 2nd floor, I did the darkest color at the bottom of the floor and then worked my way up to the lightest. And this is stuff that you don't really notice that I used to pay so much attention to and just decide to start over because I'm like, oh, that didn't make sense. But I've learned to kind of let it go and just go with the flow because it just makes card making a lot more fun when there are no rules and it doesn't have to make sense. Like a rainbow house, I probably wouldn't paint my normal house this color, but it's really fun to be able to do so in your card making. I just ran with it. I just had a lot of fun coloring this because I just really wanted to use rainbow colors. It would be fun, colorful, and bright for spring, and that's exactly what I did. I really enjoyed making this card because this has been something that I've thought about doing since this stamp set had come out. I've had it for so long and it's been sitting in my collection just waiting to be used, and I've been trying so hard to use all the sets that I have and using different different brands. If you guys have any brands that you would like to see, let me know and I will try to incorporate them into my cards. I've been doing a bit of mixing and matching lately, which I have been enjoying so much because it really stretches your supplies. It allows you to kind of think outside the box. You kind of have to deal with the different shapes and sizes of different stamp sets and then being able to use them cohesively together. It's been fun and I've really enjoyed it, especially because at the beginning of this month I had 2 back-to-back trips, which made card making so difficult because after a vacation, I always need a vacation, even if it's somewhere close by and somewhere that I didn't go for very long. I did weekend trips, but it still took so much out of me that I really wanted to sit down and make things that I really wanted to make and that I would really enjoy. And this card was so fun. I was so happy I was able to do it. The idea that I had in my head, although it didn't go exactly as planned because of the die cutting out all the windows, it still worked out. You always can pivot when you are card making and end up with something you really love. Most of the time, I will work my way through to finishing a card as much as I dislike it at that time. I find that if you step away for a bit and you come back to it, there's always something you can do to save a particular card. But of course, if you really, really hate it, it is just paper and you can just toss it and start over. That's kind of the magic of card making. There are no real mistakes, and the most harm you can do is throwing away a piece of paper. For the bottom of the card, I decided to go with pink and white. I kind of wanted a bit of brightness at the bottom of the card, mainly because there's so much color on this. I even contemplating bringing in a red door because it's kind of reminiscent of Full House and the red door on their house, but I decided to stick with little pink accents and the gray door. I tend to not use too many colors, and it's kind of funny saying that while I have a rainbow house, but I really enjoyed coloring this. This was so fun for me. So once I finish coloring, I will move on to the rest of the card. For the card itself, I decided to use a black pen just to close off the door on the fold, and then I'll go ahead and color up the rest of my Easter eggs. I picked very similar colors to the house, mainly because I wanted everything cohesive. I tend to like to recycle the same colors within a card, and usually with a rainbow card, there's just so much going on. You definitely don't want to add any more colors to your card. And then I'll use the coordinating dies to die cut all my little images out, including all those Easter eggs. And then later on, I add 2 more eggs to the mix because I wanted to scatter them throughout the house. For the window die cuts, I actually saved them. I put them aside and I color them in this light, like blue color. It's kind of like the sky color. It's perfect. And those will be my windows. Because of those openings, I decided to add double-sided adhesive all over and then just stick in a piece of cardstock. You could even use a colored cardstock just to make the inside of your card pretty, but I just went ahead and cut it out to the shape of the card. And of course, again, it doesn't have to be perfect. No one's really going to notice that. You could have just used a rectangular piece, even though this shaped card has all these little divots for the roof and then the side moldings, but you could just use a rectangle. And the only reason I did that was because my Copic markers do bleed through my cardstock. I use accent opaque white cardstock. It's been out of stock forever. The paper shortage is real. It took me forever to get that paper, and it's the cheaper paper, and it just works so well for card bases. But yeah, it took forever, and it does bleed through with Copic markers, so having something to cover up the back of it, it saved my whole die cutouts and then the whole Copic bleeding through the paper, so it was a 2-for-1, so that was very cool. For my images, you know I don't love a white outline on my images. That's why I do a lot of masking. That's why I don't mind doing a lot of masking, because I don't love it, and it doesn't look bad. It's just a matter of preference, and my preference is that there's no outline. But I went ahead and colored in the outline in the same colors. That B10 that I used for the windows, I basically colored the outline and the white area in that same color as well. And then for the mouse, there was like that orange. I just put it where the windowsill was, and it looked like it fit seamlessly, so it worked out. For my sentiment, I went ahead and stamped and heat embossed in Versamark ink and used white embossing powder. Stamped the sentiment twice because I actually have to cut up the sentiment to make it fit on the card. I wanted to use this one. It is the ears to you blue stamp set from Ellen Hudson, the Essentials by Ellen line, and I needed to stamp it twice because I needed to cut out the Your and then have the extra special as a separate sentiment. So I brushed off any excess powder that I didn't need right under the Your, and then I was able to trim it down so it looked like this was how the sentiment was meant to be. You can always make sentiments work by trimming it down, cutting it up, anything that works for your card. I tend to mask a lot, so that's usually what I did, but because these are going to be over those window inlay die cuts, I had to put it on a different piece of paper because I knew it wouldn't stamp well even if I masked it. The first part is the bottom portion of the sentiment, which is the extra special, and then I have the Your, which I'll stack right on top, and this will fit since the width of my mini slimline is about 3 inches wide. It just was way too long. My last final touch to this card is using a white gel pen just to add a bit of design onto the eggs, because what are Easter eggs if you don't go ahead and decorate them? I just added a few designs. They're very light. This gel pen worked well just to finish this off my card, and I'm so happy with it. It's the cutest mini slimline spring card I've seen in a while, and I'm so glad I was able to take you on the journey. So I hope you enjoyed it, and I will see you guys next time with another video. Bye!